Hello everybody and welcome back to another market analysis for the month of June. Now today I have a lot of topics I want to cover because there's a big update coming out in the next couple of days, as well as there's been a couple current updates that have been affecting the economy in a pretty big way. We have the new Bounty Hunter update, we have the Twitch Prime, I wouldn't call it an update, but pretty much they are giving away free membership, which has really driven up botting, which then has a pretty big effect on the economy. Even the kind of small Chambers of Xeric update managed to affect a couple items as well. And of course we have the Sins of the Father coming out in 2 days. So I'm going to be doing an overview on a few different topics and giving you my opinion on how I think it's going to affect the economy now and in the future. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed the video and let's get started. Okay, so the very first thing I wanted to talk about today is what are the consequences of giving away free membership. And what I'm talking about is the Twitch Prime event that they do biannually or something. I feel like it's twice a year. Now I just want to state I don't really blame Jagex for doing this exactly. I think it's a good idea to try to bring in new players. If you don't know, it's essentially you can get 14 days of free membership if you have an Amazon Prime account. And I'm not even sure if the issue is on Jagex's end. Maybe it's Amazon. Like maybe it shouldn't be so easy to have Prime accounts. But regardless, essentially what happens is there's a pretty easy workaround to get 14 days of free membership in RuneScape without having to pay anything, which obviously botters are going to take advantage of and love whenever this happens. Now, the first thing I'm looking at here is the market watch for botting items. Essentially, it just tracks a bunch of commonly botted items. We have 28 here. Puts it into a graph that kind of shows you the general pricing trends. Now, obviously, these things fluctuate up and down a lot, but we can see for 2019, for the most part, these items are slowly increasing in price until about April, May, and now they're starting to decrease. Okay, so before I get into the items that are really being affected by this, I want to talk about actually ones that aren't and why it's a bit different than when they normally run the Twitch Prime promotion. So in the video I made about a month ago, I highlighted the antibody measures that were put in place about 3 or 4 months ago, and still to this day they're having a really significant effect on lower end items. For example, we have oak logs here, staying pretty steady at 126, and that's just such a big difference. They've gone up 5 or 6 times in price, and that's the highest they've been in like a year or two. We have iron ore, which actually continues to go up. We were at 178 just a couple days ago, which again is about a 4 times increase. And even wines of Zamrak have increased in price a pretty significant amount, going from 1200 back in March all the way up to 1800 today. Okay, those are just a few items that are not currently being affected by having more bots in the game. And that right there is a really significant point, because even though there are a lot of bots, I mean, I've seen them, there are probably just as many bots right now. They're just not doing these lower level methods because they take too much time. And for running things like suicide bots where they just run as much as possible until they get banned, these methods are not as desirable anymore because you have to wait around, get a lot of requirements, and at that point you may as well just go for a higher tier method that will make you more money. So essentially what that has caused is a lot of the bots are now going for higher tier methods, or at least mid-tier methods, which means those items are getting affected a lot more. A really good example of this is the Pharaoh Scepter. Pyramid Plunder bots are now a lot more common because it does have a higher requirement. Yes, it's going to take a couple hours to get there, but the money per hour you can make is much higher. It's very easy for a bot to do. And as you need to spend a lot of time in game anyway before you can even bot, again, you may as well just go for a higher tier method. So the Twitch Prime update came out on the 14th, and from there it's gone down already about 700k, which is a pretty significant decrease. One of the probably most common mid-level moneymakers for bots, Dragon Bones, have gone down from about 2,900 to 2,700, about a 10% decrease, not massive, but it does seem like things are going down. Red Chinchompas going now from about 1,400 all the way down to 1,350, seem to be going down as well. Another really popular one is Master Farmers. Renar seeds are down to 44k now. They've crashed a significant amount, although they kind of already were. In the month of May, they crashed from around 70k all the way down to 45k, which is almost half. So mostly because of botting and partially because of other issues, resource items have been crashing a pretty significant amount in the month of May and going into June. I mean, it's not all bad. At least prayer potions are not 15,000 anymore. That's crazy. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about here is the general run-up of most PVM items and whether or not I think a market crash is in the imminent future. Now, a couple months ago, if someone had asked you what PVM items should you invest in, the correct answer would just be yes. because across the board, most PVM items have seen a really significant uptick in price. Like, I legitimately just picked 5 random items here, and look how similar their trend is. Like, they almost follow the exact same trend, especially these 3 items. Like, look at it, looks like it's the same item. The Arcane specifically has had a massive increase just in May from 130 mil up to 153 mil, which is insane. I'm not sure why this item has gone up more so than the others. The Twisted Bow in the last 3 months have gone up 150 mil. The Ancestral Robe Top has gone from 58 mil to 71 mil, like that's another 20 mil increase almost. The Dragon Nectar Crossbow has gone from 107 up to 115. The Dragon Warhammer has gone from 47 mil up to 61 mil. And we have the Ancestral Robe Bottom going from 60 mil up to 74 mil, and that increase is continuing into June. So the question a lot of people ask is, when is this going to end? And here are my thoughts. Now, I think there are a lot of different factors that are affecting the prices of PVM items, so if only one of those factors actually changes, I'm not sure if that is going to have as big an impact as you might think. Now, first up here, we have the increase in player counts, which I think is probably the largest factor. Now, what happens when that ends? Because a lot of people are going back to work, a lot of people are going back to school, which most likely is going to reduce our player counts by a fairly significant amount. Now, in my opinion, that probably will have an impact on the PVM market and the market as a whole. We have to keep one thing in mind, though, and that is that we are coming into this summer break anyway, which historically is a very popular time to play RuneScape, and we already see normally increased player counts then. So that on top of maybe people still not working, I'm not sure player counts are going to drop all that much in the summer. My prediction would be further into the fall, and then we might see a pretty significant reduction in players. But that's not a certainty necessarily. The player counts in RuneScape do often fluctuate seasonally, but that's no guarantee. Now, another really interesting factor that could be affecting this giant increase in price on PVM items actually has to do with the anti-botting update. The premise is that lower level money-making methods have now become a lot more profitable, which means legitimate players can make more money, and legitimate players are actually going to buy more relevant higher to mid-end gear, which then is increasing the demand, yet the supply has not increased that much, driving up the price. I mean, when you consider bots, usually they will stick to very cost-effective lower-end gear or just cheap higher-end gear like Black D'hide, stuff like that, as to mitigate the risk of them dying or getting banned with a lot more money than they need. But a legitimate player is actually going to spend their gold on relevant higher-end items, like I said, increasing the demand and the price. Now, another really interesting factor that I've mentioned in the past is the fact that there are actually natural bottlenecks on certain items. For example, God War's dungeon has a natural bottleneck, meaning the amount of worlds and the physical amount of people that can be killing the boss and getting item drops. So there is a natural ceiling to that, whereas something like raids doesn't, because it is in an instance and it doesn't matter. Now, I'm not sure how valid that point is, because if we look at the Ancestral Robe Top, for example, versus the Bandless Godsword, both of them have increased a pretty significant amount, and by actually a pretty similar percent as well. So I'm not sure if world bottlenecks are really causing too much price inflation. Could be a factor though. Now, of course, there's always going to be more factors, but those are a couple that I thought were relevant. So to answer the question, do I think there's going to be a market crash? Yes, I do. And if I were to make a guess, I would imagine it would be sometime in the fall. Because yes, people are trying to get back to their normal lives. People are going back to work. But that's not the only factor. That, coupled with a botting update and the fact that we're going to be having a few major updates, player counts may not decrease that much, and the demand for these items could continue on forward, at least for the foreseeable future. Okay, so now let's talk about the Sins of the Father. That is going to be out in 2 days, and let's look at what items have been affected by the upcoming update. Now, the only way a potential update can actually affect item prices is if we have some information on what is going to be required for the update. So in this case, we have a quest. We have a rune crafting method, we have primarily an agility training method. So from there we can deduce a couple of things. The 2 major items that I thought of were the Dragon Pickaxe, because now with the Sins of the Father, there's going to be a new mining method that is going to provide also an increase in rune crafting experience. So because of that, the Dragon Pickaxe has increased fairly significantly over the last couple of months. Back in March, it was worth around 5 mil, and now it's worth about 5.8 mil, and I would expect on the release day for it to increase more, dependent on how important it is. Now, probably the item with the most significant increase is the Stamina Potion. Since April, it's now increased almost 2,000 GP, and probably is going to continue to increase more. Stamina Potions pretty much being used anywhere there's agility. We're not quite sure whether or not they are necessary in the Hallowed Sepulchre. But on top of them being required for agility, there's also a new item that is going to be coming out that can hold stamina doses. So I'm sure a lot of people are going to mass buy stamina potions to add to the new stamina chalice thing. I don't remember what it's called. And honestly, those are the only couple items that I think are directly affected. Obviously, loads of things could be indirectly affected, but we just don't know quite enough about the update yet. I'm sure there will be a couple of random quest items that are like necessary, like vodkas were from the Fossil Island update, but we'll have to wait until the 4th to know for sure. And finally, I always like to have a quick look at bonds. They've been kind of hovering steady at probably the cheapest price they are going to be this year. I really don't think they are going to get any less expensive. Bonds are something that are directly affected by player counts. With more players, more people are buying bonds to get back into the game. I'd imagine when those players go back to work, stop playing as much, bonds are going to go back up. So January, February is when player counts started to increase, and April is really when they kind of went off the charts to new levels, and we can see that really just directly affected the price of bonds. So we can deduce that when player counts go down, most likely bonds are going to rise back up. Anyway guys, that's pretty much going to be it for today's video. So yes, PVM items are expensive, and they could continue to be more expensive even over the next couple of months. But one thing I just want to highlight is that doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't buy PVM items, even though they're maybe 20%, 30%, 50% more expensive than they were a few months ago. You're still better off just getting the gear upgrade because it's going to help you out long term. You're probably going to keep that item anyway, so it doesn't matter too much. And even if the Twisted Bow drops 300 mil after you buy it, the Twisted Bow is going to let you make way more money than even losing hundreds and hundreds of millions, whatever impacts you. So really just not worth worrying about. Thanks for watching guys, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, I always appreciate it. If you leave the video a like, and I'll see you next time.